Hello, everybody. So for the next 45 minutes, we want to talk about selling, but not the selling that we usually do to customers. We want to talk about selling your own company. And I want to show you how we have done it recently. So I sold my own company last year to another company. But actually, I could also say, like, this is maybe how to sell your friends. Because at least for me, in our company, everybody is a good friend of mine that we work every single day. So it's not just what you want, it's also what your employees want. And in some cases, it's also something that you have built. Sweat and tears, sleepless nights, thousands of hours that you put into it. In my case, it was more than 10 years of working on a company that you now put on the market and you try to find a buyer for it. So yeah, it's much more than just selling a company. It's really selling your friends, your family, your legacy. So the question, of course, is why do you even want to do this? Like, why do you want to sell a company? And for me, during this process, it really became clear that at least there were multiple reasons. First of all, you maybe want to retire, or you maybe want to move on. It wasn't the case for me, but this is where a lot of companies are sold, that you say, well, I've done it now for many, many years, and I want to do it, I want to do something else, or you want to retire, and you're the owner of the company, and you need to move on. The other one is you maybe need more cash. So let's say you want to expand, and you want to have more capital to work with that. Selling your company can be that. It doesn't always have to be that, but it can be. So that's a reason. Or also, and I don't think a lot of people look at that one, but it can also be expanding customers and markets. You can be bought by a company that is bigger than you, that has access to markets already. And that can be a reason to get bought by a company that gives you access to these markets, customers, and other things. So these are the three things that for us, it was really about the last one and also a little bit the middle one. I will go a bit into that. For myself, it was not about retirement, but actually for the two other founders that founded the company with me, they wanted to move on. So you can also see that in an ownership of a company, this might be different for every single person. So think about this. Specifically, if your company is owned by multiple people, figure this out before you even start. Like, don't go into assumptions in what the other people that own the company maybe want to do. Talk about this, and I'm telling you, this is not easy to talk about. Specifically, like in ownerships, usually you don't talk about really what's next. You always talk about what are we doing next with the company, but not what is next for you personally. So if you are in the situation, figure this out first. And I'm also telling you, this is not going to be one night. This is going to be multiple. In our case, it was multiple weeks of talking with different people, because suddenly you realize, oh, this person wants to move on, and I was hoping they would still stay with me. And then this changes it for you, and so do I want to move on? So there's a lot of things that can suddenly be triggered by these questions, specifically, of course, if you have multiple owners in the company. So let's say you decide that you want to do it, and there is a lot of different types of deals or types of selling your company. There is the easiest one, I would say, is a bank investment, where you get cash for shares. A bank can be typically any bank. If they are a bit bigger, they actually have an investment arm where they invest into companies. Now, they're most probably not going to buy your whole company. That would be very weird, because then the bank owns it, but they maybe buy 30% of it. And they will give you a specific amount of cash for that shares. And of course, what you have to understand is the bank is not going to be interested to own you forever. They are interested in basically an exit later. So that's really about just the cash for shares. And important is that they don't usually have a big network. So if you want to sell your company to gain access to a bigger network, the bank might not be it. And the other important thing is you can't leave. So if you sell shares to a bank, they want to make sure that you as the owners are still on it. If you tell them that you're willing, that you want to move on, and that's why you're talking to a bank, you're out immediately. Like, that's not. So understand this. But this is actually, I would say, of all the ones, and we see how the process is, this is actually more an easier one to access money, that you can sell a specific amount of shares of your company to a bank. Of course, you have to convince them and you have to show them a lot of things. They will do a lot of due diligence and stuff like that. But that is one of the possibilities, and maybe also the easiest in the beginning if you just need more investment. The last one is the most important thing, like you are going to have to be fully involved. It's still you. So if the plan is to move on, this is not the right one for you. The next one, and that's maybe a bit the scary one, is, at least that was what it was for me, is the VC route or the venture capitalists. These are the dangerous people that force you to do something. At least that's what it was for me. Now, they will provide you with cash. They will bring you cash into the company. They will buy some of your shares, and you will receive cash to then actually invest the money even more. Important to understand is they need a high return. They are in the business of investing into companies. They know that 90% of the companies will die that they invest in, but there is that single company that will have 100 times return and therefore will cover all the losses of the other companies. Understand this. That's their business model. They receive money from liquidity providers to then invest into other companies, and these liquidity providers, they expect a return, and you are that return. So understand how they work, how many other companies they have, how they plan to use you. Because if you don't provide that high return, that's literally the only way that these companies make money, is for you to provide them return. At one point, you're going to be out. If you're too risk for them, they will kill you. They will just remove your company from them. They will sell you again. And a lot of times, they will actually take a quite high amount of percentage. So that means you don't actually have to say a lot about your own company. What is great, though, is that usually they have an access to a massive amount of network of other companies. Specifically, if you talk to bigger VC companies, sometimes they have specific deals that you can only access through them. Like one of them is, for example, AWS has deals with some venture capitalists, and you get up to $100,000 in credit from AWS just because you're venture backed now. And there's hundreds of other these deals out there that you can leverage now as a company just because you're now in this part of this network. And there's way more than Y Combinator. That's the one that everybody knows. But there is hundreds of these VCs out there that provide a network. So look at if you maybe need specific access to specific companies or specific skills or specific knowledge, the VC can actually be a great access to that. The other important thing, though, is that usually the owners, like with the bank, again, you need to provide this high return, and usually that is provided by the owners of the company. So think about that you're going to still be fully involved in this, at least for some time. It's probably going to be quite hard if one of the owners wants to leave and also sell it to the VC. There's going to be a hard discussion with the VC because somebody that just built up the company is leaving and they're expecting you to make more money than you did before. So that's going to be a hard discussion with a VC. So think about that. The last one is called M&A, or merger and acquisition, which basically means a company will buy you, another company. Or if the companies are roughly the same size, usually you talk about the merge. If a company is bigger than the other one, the bigger company acquires the smaller company. Now here, what can happen is that this is cash and share-based. That means you will receive a specific amount of cash, but you also will receive a specific amount of shares of the company that buys you, which means you don't gain really anything. They have, of course, a value, but if that company is not stock traded, you can't sell the shares. So it's really hard to know what they're actually worth. But sometimes that's what is requested. And these deals are very individual. So it's very hard to come up with a standard on this because it really depends which company buys which. I've seen deals where one company buys another company only for shares. So the owners of the company received no cash at all. All they received is shares of the company that bought them. Others is 100% cash. So it's really dependent, and this is very hard to come up. But of course, what is great is you have access to their customers, because the company that just bought you, they have customers, and you can talk to them, and they also maybe have a network. Maybe they are VC-backed, and they have access to a network. So again, because this is very specific. And here, it can be that the owner don't have to be involved anymore. It's actually quite common, maybe unfortunately, that in the acquisition, some people need to leave. Like if you have a head of marketing and the company that buys has a head of marketing, you don't need two head of marketings. But if the head of marketing wants to leave, that's great. So again, it's dependent on what exactly is but talk about this, like that's really, really important. All right, so we learned a bit, why do we do it, what type of deals and things. And now let's actually talk about how it was for us, the Amazee.io story, that what did we do, why did we do it? So a little bit of history. Amazee.io started from 2015 from within Amazee Labs. Amazee Labs is a Drupal agency, still exists today, and we built Drupal sites. And we ran into a problem that we did not find the hosting that we wanted ourselves. Specifically because of the countries, because we had to host in Switzerland, but also because of the processes that we saw, it wasn't really what we wanted. So we built it ourselves. Actually never thinking about building another company out of this. I just tried to solve the problems of my developers. And that's why we built a hosting. Later on, we realized, oh, what we built is actually interesting for others. So we started to offer it. We created its own company, its own legal entity, and started to offer the services as well. Now, we were part of the Amazee Holding. The Amazee Holding was a holding company because there is actually a third company called Amazee Metrics. So there was already two companies, Amazee Labs and Amazee Metrics, and there was an Amazee Holding. So we became part of the Amazee Holding. And what was really great, the Amazee Holding actually was able to fund us. So the Amazee Holding made profits, and with these profits, we invested them into Amazee.io. So in the beginning, we never needed seed funding, external seed funding, or VCs. We were completely self-funded through the company that actually existed. This is completely different to our competitors, which are much bigger, 100 plus employees, and they are VC-backed. So if you look at our direct competitors, which is Pentium Platform and Acquia in the Drupal space, all of them are VC-backed, meaning they have much more money than we, and they are bigger than us. Interestingly, the holding structure, or COVID, forced us to rethink the holding structure. Because interestingly enough, Amazee.io actually grew during COVID because our customers, some of them the government customers, they added more sites, specifically COVID sites, that exploded in traffic. So we needed to grow, while some of the other companies of the Amazee Holding shrank during COVID because some of the customers stopped projects. So suddenly this company that worked well with this holding structure didn't work anymore. And we started to split up the holding into individual entities once again, just because we realized these companies, they can't really work together anymore. But that also opened up for these individual companies to actually decide what they're going to do. And so in 2020, so during COVID, we realized we need some kind of cash injection to compete with the market. Meaning we need access to more customers, we need access to more investments, because at that point, we basically had to be profitable. So the Amazee.io had to suddenly become profitable during COVID. We lost a little bit of money all the time before, but that was fine because we had the holding that invested this money into us. But during COVID, the holding money was gone, and so we had to become profitable. But we also knew if you want to be purely profitable to grow, specifically in Drupal, where new things are happening very fast, we needed some additional force in the rocket that is taking up. And so, yeah, so we started to talk to some VC and some banks, and very fast we realized this is not us. The type of people that we met, how they talked about us, we just realized this is not what we want to do. This is not what we want for us, and this is also not what we want for the employees, and also not for the customers. So very fast we said, okay, we go for merger acquisition. Meaning we want to find a company that wants to buy us, or that we could merge together to build this thing up into the future, we felt this is much better than going the VC or bank route. And so we said, okay, what is next? And the first thing we actually realized, well, we need to find an M&A advisor, because we've never done this. Like, we've never sold a company. How do you know what to do next? And so we actually first, before we even started talking to companies that could buy us, we first hired an M&A advisor, meaning that's a person that helps you selling your company. And because we didn't just want to go with the first person that we found, we actually had 3 different advisors that we talked to. So we let them pitch us, why should we take them? And this itself took 6 months. Like, this is just like a process of, again, but you know, that you will work with these people, you will work day and night. They will sell your company. They will represent the company in front of possible buyers. So you better choose somebody that you trust. It's like your lawyer. They will stand in front of the judge and represent you. And for us, it was really important that we find somebody that really, really fits us, that understands. And we actually chose an individual person. So we chose a single M&A advisor that does nothing else than that, but he has 3 customers at the same time, which we felt was great, because that's also how we do it. Our own company has rather less customers, but really high quality, high interaction, white glove. While we talk to some M&A advisors, they have 100 companies at the same time that they sell. And you never talk to the same person. You always talk to somebody else, and this was not what we wanted. So that's definitely something we did really well. It took a long time, but that was really good. Like I said, this took long. So in 2021, in March, we decided on the M&A advisor, and also we communicated the decision to the team. We wanted very early that our team knows what is going on. Now, we told them we cannot give you every single details, because actually some of these contracts, they prevent you to telling, because if this goes out, like, you have other problems. But we told the team that we're gonna work on finding additional funding to the company. And we wanted to make sure that everybody knows about this, because if this leaks somehow and the company employees, suddenly there's rumors that and obviously usually the rumors are always the worst of it. And so, like, if they say, like, oh, we believe that all the 3 founders of the company are gonna leave, and like all these things, then we said, no, let's, as soon as we can, we told the team what we can tell them, but we also had to tell them, look, we cannot tell you everything, but we will keep you up to date as much as we can. So the team knew in March 2021. Then in April to September, there was a part that I didn't really realize, but this M&A advisor had no idea about our business. So the first 3 months of this whole project, I explained to the M&A advisor how our business actually works. Because that person needs to represent you. They need to understand how it is. So this took quite some time, that they understand how your business works, how the different departments work, how the sales works, how marketing works, how finance works. It's a lot. Like, you just need to explain. Basically, you need to onboard a new management member that is not your management. Like, they have to understand everything about your business. And what we did together is you create 2 documents. The first one is called the teaser. It's a single page, and it did not include the name Amazy.io in it. We gave it a random name. It was called Edison. I don't know why, but that was just what the company was called. And on this page, you have a rough overview of what the company is, how much revenue they make, how many people they are, just super basic things. And you create an information memorandum, or an IM. This is 45 pages and goes into the details. So it has customers' names, employee names, management, history, financial data, basically everything about your company. All the secrets pretty much are in there. Okay, so what you do then is you look at possible companies that can buy you. So the M&A came to us, the M&A advisor, came to us and gave us 250 possible companies that he thinks that could buy us. And we then went through and shortlisted 120 of them, because some of our competitors were in there and other stuff. So, like, there were companies in there that I would never sell to. So we removed them, and we had 120. So we gave him back 120. And the M&A advisor then sent the teasers to these 120 companies. So they received information that there's a company out there that is willing to sell, but again, they don't know the company name, things like that. If then these companies are interested, and there were around 30 of them, they will have to sign an NDA, and then you send them the information memorandum, which is the 45 pages. So they get the teaser, they sign the NDA if they're interested, and then they get the full thing. And then they start to have meetings with the M&A advisor and the CEO. So up until that, it's very transactional, like via email, back and forth, not much. But at that point, the M&A advisors start to have calls with these companies that were actually interested. And the companies also started to meet, in our case, the CEO. So if the company that wanted to buy us was roughly interested in what they saw, they have a meeting and then they come with questions and you answer the questions and they tell you afterwards if they're still interested or not. And then is the time of the management meetings and demos. And this is very specific to your case or very specific on the buyer. So the buyer basically tells you who they want to meet. The problem is, nobody knows about this. So our team roughly knew, but they didn't know which companies we're talking to. Our customers didn't know. So I actually just stopped before that doing technical demos to customers because we hired people that do this. But I couldn't tell these people, so I suddenly had to do technical demos again to the buyers. And what was really interesting is you do the same demo or use the same presentation. Like I did it like 30 times, knowing that only one of them will actually choose us. Like if you do a demo to 30 possible customers, you could have 30 possible customers. In this case, I knew it's only going to be 1 or 0. There's not 2. So at one point, it felt quite draining to do this again and again and again and again. And a lot of times, they have no idea. In this case, they had no idea about Drupal. So the questions they asked, like it was just like, so I have to tell you, this was quite a draining time because suddenly it's you. Like there were 3 or 4 people knew about this, and you have to answer every single question. So they ask you financial data that I didn't know, but I have to check with my financial team. The financial team asks you, why do you want to know all this information suddenly? So it's like a lot of things. And in some cases, they also wanted to do on-site meetings, which becomes really hard if you have a remote company and the employees, like you're suddenly in San Francisco for no reason at all. So yeah, we did it, it worked out, but yeah, I was just like, I had to be for some reason in San Francisco and we couldn't tell the team really. Yeah. So overall, honestly, this felt like selling and dating at the same time. Like you sell yourself, but you also try to date because these people that you're meeting with, you know you're going to spend time with them. So, and you're actually going to spend way more time with them than just the customer. So yes, that was a weird time to go through because it's just something that at least I've never done. But that's where the M&A advisor really helps. So that's where they help you to go through that process. The next step is a so-called term sheet. And it's basically like if you ever bought a house, it's like an offer letter for a house. It roughly outlines the price that the company is willing to pay. It also mentions roughly between shares and cash. It mentions about the payout scheme. I will explain this a little bit later. And other important parts of thing. But it's not like a legal document yet. It's just a term sheet where the buyer, if they're interested, says, I'm willing to pay X amount. I will give you this amount of shares. I expect that, and that. That doesn't mean, though, that you have to accept it. This is when the negotiation starts. So then you can make a counteroffer. You can say, I want this, or I want more cash, or I want more that, or I want this. So again, here the M&A advisor is really important because you are now suddenly talking about your own company, the thing that you bought up. And it's very hard to say, I want $2 million more to somebody that wants to buy you. And then they say, no, but you're not worth that. And then you're like, oh. So the M&A advisor really helps in that situation because they can represent you. So actually the negotiations, I've met the CEO that bought us during all the on-site and everything, and I've met a lot of their team, but the negotiations happened through the M&A advisor So we never had to actually argue about money with the person that will later work with you every single day. And that helps. That really helps. It's similar to if you buy houses and things like that. So it's just because it's such an emotional thing as well that you're like out of this. Funny enough, also, that's usually when things break down. Like, that's when, like, everything is fine until then, and then you realize, okay, the expectations of buying and selling is completely off, and that it can be completely off. And I will tell you our timeline later a bit, but yeah. Important is, if the term sheet is signed, this means the company that sent you the term sheet and you signed it has exclusivity. Meaning at that point, you break up or you stop all the other discussions that you maybe have. You do not talk with anybody else except that company. So they buy exclusivity. It either goes through, which is great, or it does not, and then you can go back to all the other companies and say, hey, are you still interested? But yes, at that point, they have exclusivity. And then the time of due diligence starts. And in our case, due diligence meant we had to upload more than 200 documents into a specific due diligence platform, which is made for that specific reason. This includes every single contract with every employee, every client, and every vendor, every P&L statement that we had ever since the inception of the company, every board meeting minutes, so every decision that you ever have taken, they want to know when did you take the meeting, or when did you take the decision, why. Any founding documents, so the things that you created 10 years ago, they want to see them. Like we ourselves, we have multiple legal entities, so we had to find all the documents for all of them again. And any legal disputes. Like we had cases where customers threatened to sue us, and we had to prove that this threat is actually gone. So there's like all these different things that come from the past. And we also had to create projections now with the new company. So the information memorandum, of course, included projections for ourselves. But now we had to create projections with the new company. So you have to understand the company that buys you to now try to project what your company can do, the fact that you're now there. So it's quite complex. And this took a long time to create all the documents, them looking at them, and they looked at each of them. So they found like wrong things in contracts of clients, and we had to fix that. So then suddenly you go to your client and saying, hey, can we redo this contract again? And you cannot tell them why, so that's another fun thing. Also important is, read through the contracts. We actually found in 3 contracts with customers, clauses that said, if you sell your company, or if there's a majority change in ownership, you have to inform us. So you could break a contract with what you're doing right now. So this actually helped us because we read through every customer contract once more because we had to find these things. So not only just upload the thing, also read through them and make sure they're correct. Then there is so-called reverse due diligence, meaning you as the company getting bought, you also want to know about the other company. Now in our case, and as I've been told, that's actually very little. So it's much higher trust in the buyer than the seller. So you just have to trust that the buyer is actually what they're saying. In our case, we received what the board members received from the company, so that helped. So we saw like projections in there and things like that. But we obviously spent much less time talking about their company than they talked with us about our company. So that's just something that, yeah. What I have to say afterwards, we probably should have done this way earlier. At that point, during the due diligence, it's all about you. So we should have probably maybe asked way more questions in the management meetings, like the first time that we met them on the on-site, to really figure out if this is really that. Yeah, and then the due diligence goes through. Then you create the so-called share purchase agreement. In our case, this is an 80-page legal document that outlines how exactly these 2 companies get bought. In our case, because the company that was sold is a Swiss company, the company that bought us was a US company, we agreed to Swiss law, meaning we actually had 8 lawyers or 20 assistants of them. We had a lawyer of the buyer in the US, that's the regular lawyer. They had to find a lawyer in Switzerland because it was Swiss law. The US buyer, the US lawyer has no idea about Swiss law, still thought like they can do stuff by the US, but that didn't work. And then we obviously had a lawyer as well in Switzerland. So yeah. Like, have you ever seen like these fun things when you do like this meeting cost this much with engineers? Yeah, make that times 10. Because some of these lawyers have $800 or $1,000 per hour. So, yeah. We had some meetings that we knew this costs like per hour, I think we calculate like $15,000. So, and you pay all of this, by the way. In our case, we were able to agree that we just pay our lawyer and the customer pays their lawyer, the buyer pays their lawyer, but that's not all the time. And the other fun thing is time zones. So the US lawyers are in San Francisco, the Swiss lawyers are in Switzerland. So yeah, we had multiple I had multiple emails from my Swiss lawyers that I received at their 3 a.m. So they just worked through the night and until the things were done, and they were like new renegotiations. And of course, you have changes last minute. Like, you think it's all done, and then somebody brings up one topic, and suddenly there's 3 calls through the night until 6 a.m. in the morning where 2 lawyers shout at each other. So, I always said, like, I should have become a lawyer. This told me I should not. Like, or if you become a lawyer, don't become an M&A lawyer, because the amount of work that these people did, like, it's crazy. Like, the document that was sent back and forth, like, if you ever seen, like, these, like, change documents in Word, like, I've never seen so many tabs on the side of changes, of, like, it's just, like, it's crazy. Anyway, at one point, you agree, and you sign this whole thing. Now, in our case, again, I'm in the US, 2 of the other founders are in Australia, one of the other owners is in New Zealand, one of the owners was in Switzerland, but at that time that we signed, he happened to be in Germany, traveling around. And somehow, even though 2 tech companies buy each other, they decided that they want to physically exchange documents with wet ink signatures, meaning your signature is on it. So we had to ship around proxy documents for multiple weeks, where you basically sign something and you ship it to your lawyer, and then the lawyer basically like hands it over on the table. Then you wait for wire transfer, so it's literally what you see in the movies. There's 2 people on the phone saying, please transfer money, and our Swiss bank said, we have not yet, now we have received it, and then you hand over document. It's crazy. So, and then you have to communicate this to the team and the special customers. Like, there are some customers that were legally allowed to know immediately after you signed. You have to inform them. Then we told this to the team itself. Then, funny enough, wires don't transfer immediately. Like, this takes hours. I don't know, banking's crazy. So, like, even though it's technical, like, this somehow stuck the money. I don't know, it's flying from the US to Switzerland. Anyway. But we had to tell the team already, so it could still go wrong. Like, there's this very weird time of like couple of hours where you're not really sure if now, like, I don't know, something happens, who is really responsible because the money didn't receive? It's just, anyway. And then you do the press release, and that's when you announce to the whole world that you did this, and customers could be angry at you, and other customers are happy, and it's just like, yeah, it's a lot of fun. Anyway, so like, how did the timeline? So we signed, like I said, we started in 2020 with the M&A advisors. In March, we sent out the information memorandum. On the 15th of October, we signed the NDA with the company. On the 19th of October, 2021, we had the first intro call. On the 1st of December, we had the first demos. Then they wanted an on-site, so I flew out there in January 2022. And they sent us the first initial offer and the first term sheet. And then you see there's a long line of 3 months of nothing. Because we couldn't agree. Like, it just went back and forth. We couldn't agree. For 2 weeks, we didn't talk to them at all. It was just complete silence. And then one person started to talk again, and it's just like back and forth. Then we did the due diligence. That started on the 11th of May. Then they wanted to do another on-site visit during the due diligence, which was quite interesting, but that's what they want, so they get it. Like, so my CEO, he flew over for 18 hours being in San Francisco, so he sat in airplanes for like 40 hours to have an 18-hour on-site. So, yeah, that's what you do. Then we had more negotiations, and then we finally signed the share purchase agreement, basically 2 years after we decided we want to do this. So I'm not saying this is the standard, but of what I've been told by M&A advisors, that's roughly the timeline. Like think about this can take from 6 to 18, maybe 24 months. And imagine we would not have come to a term, let's say in the middle of 2022, then you would have to start the whole thing again with the other companies. So if you do it when you're desperate because you suddenly need, let's say, money or you want to be out, this is too late. Like start this much earlier. And you can also, of course, you can also start it. The only thing is here. Only that's when you're legally binded. Everywhere before you can say no at any time. So think about this. Now, a bit about deal structure. So of the total share price, we got 50% on closing, meaning 50% of the agreed share price we got. There's a weird thing about US law that there's a 15% holdback. So they basically keep 15% of the 50% they just keep for 2 years. And then 2 years later you will receive it. The argument is that if you lie, they will use that for paying the lawyers to sue you. And again, it's weird. And then we have some achievements that we need to reach, and at that point we get another 50%. So that's very common. They somehow bought the in. What is really cool, all our employees got options. That was one of the main deal for us. Our employees really wanted to be part of the company, and before we couldn't really do this with the structure we had. The new company has, every single employee has options or shares, depending on if they vest or not. So that's really cool. And then we have, for some key employees, there is additional options. Now, a lot of people always ask me, so how long did you sign up for? And in law, like in contractual law or like employee law, it's not possible. You cannot bind somebody for multiple years. Like it's not possible that you sign a contract that says, I will stay with this company for 2 years. At least for US law, this is impossible. So you don't really have a contractual obligation to stay, but they have a lot of other ways to do this. Like, for example, if I would leave right after the signing, I would lose the options. So the options that were promised to me that I have to wait for, but the deal itself would still have happened. So some of the things, if you leave, you could lose or not. And of course, it's a high risk to not reach the goal. Like it would be stupid to leave the day after because you still have a goal that you need to reach. And if you don't reach it, and if you leave, it's a high risk. So, and so therefore, there's like an indirect commitment that you give to the buyer that you stay at the company. Because if you would leave, you would lose so much of the possibility of the earnings that you get. So that's how they basically bind you to the company, but it's not like a specific month or day that I signed something. Yeah, what are the learnings? First of all, have your stuff together. Like, if I would do this all again, I would definitely be much better in making sure that every contract is there, every employee contract is there, every board meeting is there, because we found a lot of things that somehow happened 8 years ago, and you're trying to figure out what is going on. And at that time, I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, we found like $10,000 in a budget that was unaccounted for. And then they come back and say, like, where is this $10,000? And you're like, I don't know. Then they say, well, figure out. And so you just spend old Slack messages reading through and trying to figure out what we decided at that point. So have your stuff together all the time, because if you don't, it's going to bite you at one point. Definitely get an M&A advisor. I cannot stress this enough. Yes, they're going to take money. They're going to take a percentage of the sell price. But at least what I believe in the amount that if you have never done this before, these companies will steamroll over you. Like they will just, like there's just expectations in this whole process of how these things work. If you don't know them, you're going to completely fail, and they can represent you. So specifically during like negotiations breakdown and stuff, yeah, the M&A advisor was extremely valuable. And at the end, be ready for a wild ride. Like this is probably the most craziest thing I learned. Never before I've learned so much about myself and the company than during this process. Because you have to explain your company a lot, you have to talk to your people, you have to talk about your other founders. So it's a lot, but you're actually learning a shitload about yourself and about the company. And all in all, yes, it was a great learning. And that's it.
we have some question in the app.
Yes.
So first question, in regards to the situations where the owners stay on but the acquirer buys shares, what are your thoughts on diluting shares for the new owners versus selling existing shares?
I'm not sure if I understand the question correct. What are your thoughts on diluting shares for the new owners versus selling existing shares? So in our case, the company that bought us created new shares and gave them to us. But yes, basically what it probably refers to is that every time that you create new shares in a company, the existing shares are diluted. But the company that bought us had to dilute their shares. So we really didn't worry about that. But of course, now the company that owns us, if they now buy another company, it will dilute our shares even more. So, but that's actually not something that you really have under control, or that we didn't have under control in our case.
We have another question. Based on the expenses you described experiencing during the acquisition, isn't there a risk that the overheads eat too much into the profit of a sale for it to be economical?
Yes, yeah, that's definitely a risk. So you could spend so much time during that process that you not do sales or things like that, and then your profit goes down, which then causes pain to the company, and in the end, the company doesn't want to buy you, and you spend all this time, and yeah, this is a risk, yes, that can happen. That's why the M&A advisor also helps, because they do a lot of the work for you. So because yes, during all of this, you still have a company to run. Like there's new customers, customer leaving, new employees, so your company is still running. What we try to do is not to add too many people, but it's usually the people that steer the ship. So it's all the owners, the whole management is part of this. So there is a risk there, yes.
Another question. How were the goals set for the second 50% of the deal? How hard were you pushed in setting the goals?
So we could define our goals ourselves, which is great, but it's not always the case. And so we used the goals that we anyway had for the company, and we added a little bit on top, because now we are part of the bigger company and we should be able to generate more. But of what I've heard is that is really dependent on the buyer, the situation, things like that. So it could be that their term sheet says, we want you to make 4 times more revenue in the next year than what you've done last year. And then it's something that you really have to think about. Is this something we can achieve or not? So it's part of the negotiations going back and forth. But I think it's an important one, because after all is signed, everybody looks at that number that you agreed on, that what you will receive. So you get measured on this and this only. So make sure that whatever is in there is something that you feel comfortable with.
Another question. Does the advisor work on a fixed percentage, or does it depend on certain factors?
That's a good question. For us, it was a fixed percentage, but it can depend. So, well, that's actually not correct. So they take a monthly fee, which was like $5,000. So it's not a lot. For the work that they do, it's not a lot at all. But this gives them at least a little bit of money that they receive in case, because if you never sell, the M&A advisor also never gets any money. So most M&A advisors charge you a little bit per month, and then they take a percentage. I think average is 8%, which is quite a lot. But again, use them for what they can, for their experience. But you can do a deal, whatever you want with the M&A advisor. Like, it's really dependent on, and it's also no problem. Like during the due diligence, when we chose the M&A advisors, that was one of the things as well. It's like, how much do you want? Can we reduce your rate as well? I wouldn't though do too much with the M&A advisor. Like, don't pressure them too much, because in the end you depend on them to help you. And if they have a very bad deal with you, they're not going to help you anymore. And so you're basically without an M&A advisor again. So keep them in a place that they're happy as well.
We still have 1 minute, so last question here, and maybe take another on the audience. Any advice to know if the buyer is really interested or just want to get all your information?
you have no idea. Like, it could be that it's completely like somebody that just gets all your information and steals them from you, because yeah, you basically give them everything. But that's also good, again, to have the M&A advisor. So they will be able to tell you if the buyer is serious or not. Like, because they have seen this already many times before. So based on what the questions are, they can help you. Yes, any questions from here? Yes.
Was there progress to determine the value of your company?
Yes, and it's completely arbitrary. Like, it's arbitrary.
Yeah.
Like, you're basically saying, I think it's this.
Yeah.
And then they say, no, I think it's that. Like, it's just like, if you're not stock traded, how do you know what the value of your company is? Like, it's completely hard to say. There are models, and the M&A advisor should be able to help you with that, but there's not like a fixed model that everybody uses. Usually it's some kind of multiplier of the revenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
What factors have the biggest influence on the selling price?
So what factors have the biggest?
Yeah. What kind of? Yeah.
I've only done it once, so I can only tell it in our case. It's a lot. It has to do with, well, obviously, how much revenue you make. We didn't make much profit at that point, so the profit is not really important. But the company that bought us also doesn't really make a lot of profit, so that's a good thing. But it has a lot to do with in which market are you, how experienced are you, what type of customers do you have, how good is your team. So it's a lot of things that are very hard to measure. But in the end, yeah, you're trying to price something that has never been priced before. So it's really hard. And it's part of negotiations. Like, it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And at one point you will find yourself or not.
Before starting this process, did you do or think about asking your customer or competitor or some organization you are interested in buying your company?
We thought about our competitors and decided very fast, no, we don't want to do this, just because none of our competitors are open source. So it was pretty clear for us that we're never going to sell us to them. If we had some of of this list of 250 people, there were some of our customers in there. So that was one of the possibilities, but it wasn't something that happened.
One last question, because
Here.
Do you feel more or less free or locked in now than before?
That's the real question. So the good thing for us, and I'm not saying this is standard, our whole team, branding, processes, everything stayed the same. The only thing that really changed is that instead of the CEO reporting to the board of Amazia.io, it's now the CEO reporting to the CEO of the company that bought us. But this is very exceptional. My experience with others, and now actually Mirantis, the company now, they're buying more companies. They're buying them, they're completely dissolved within the company. So every process changes everything. But we were such a strong independent company that had everything that they decided to not do that. And because of that, I still can take the same amount of decisions that I was able to do before. But I can't tell you if this is going to be forever. It depends if the companies are going to stay on. Right now, I feel the same as before, but it would be very different if the company would have bought us and would have integrated us completely. Because then I would probably lost a lot of control, but that was part of the deal. Like we said, if we do this, we want to have some kind of authority still, or I'm gone. Like that was one of them. And so they said, okay, no, we want to give authority, so that's why we structured it that way. So it's, right now it's the same, but it probably will change in the future. Thank you.